Hello and welcome to our worldwide webinar, Tips and Tricks for DocuWare Administrators. This time with the Workflow Manager Advanced session, as we had the basic session last week, now with a little bit more advanced information about our Workflow Manager module. My name is Ben Breitenstein. I'm responsible for the support team Green in the EMEA region and your host of this webinar today. What are our goals today? Last week, as I just said, we had a little kind of an introduction to the more basic information about the Workflow Manager. Now, today we want to show you more advanced features, troubleshooting hints, so a little bit more into detail about other or little bit more complex Workflow Manager topics. These are our topics today, as you can see. Again, a lot of stuff on the schedule. Also a little bit, of course, due to your feedback in the poll last week, as you remember. So we did, of course, also have a little focus on this in the preparation. As always, let us know about your ideas and topics that you are interested in for the next sessions and within the next month. And from your feedback, basically, also we have developed this webinar, the topics for today. And so we are very much interested in what you think what might be interesting for next sessions in 2018. At the end, you'll have a little survey, and you can then just also provide your wishes for other sessions, for future sessions. Now I would like to introduce you to our webinar team for today's session, which is Thomas and me on the moderation side, answering questions. And of course, then we have, of course, also colleagues who do present something to you today, which is Michael, mostly also from EMEA support team Green, and he's supported by Greg from America's support team. As you know from last week, Michael and Greg on the front line of support for our partners and customers. So of course, they have a lot of knowledge to bring to you today regarding the Workflow Manager. And we have also some additional background stuff also to answer questions or clarify things and help us in the background, which are Matthias and Gerardo. And the most relevant questions of yours will be presented at the end of the webinar, again, like we did it last week in a little Q&A, question and answer session. For this or to ask questions, you can use the question panel of the GoToWebinar client, which is shown here. And before we start, again, also as last week, I would like to know your opinion about a little question regarding the Workflow Manager, which is which type of external data source do you consider as most important or maybe most interesting? We'd be interested in your feedback about this and present the results as we did it last week also in a second. And afterwards we'll start. So it seems I can tell this much before closing the poll in a few seconds. External data file cabinet seems to be very interesting for most of you. As there is not that much change anymore. I'll close the poll and present the results quickly to you. As you can see, 42%, not that far away from every second participant today is most interested in external data file cabinet as an external data source. Thank you for this little information of yours, and let's continue basically, or let's get started. So thank you for your feedback, and Michael, you can take over now with our advanced session today.
Okay, thank you, Bernd, for the introduction. My name is Michael, as you already know, and I will show you some advanced things we can do in the Workflow Manager. Okay, let me see if I can do this. Okay, you can see my screen now. This is a virtual machine that I created for this webinar. What we want to do today is we want to organize a company field trip So this is a very simplified overview of what we want to do today. We have a registration. Of course, everybody who wants to participate in the field trip has to register using a form. Then the supervisor has to approve. Then we have a payment step. So because the fee for the field trip will be $10. And well, if that has been completed and the payment has been received, then in the end we have, of course, the participation. What we also have is a list. It's a quick overview of all people who have registered, difficult word, so far. Those are just random names, and what I want to do, I want to participate as well, and well, in the end, I want to see my name on the list too. So what I have to do to get started, I have to fill this form. Okay, that's not correct. With my name and my email address. This is a Gmail account that I've created specifically for this webinar. And yeah, okay. And that's all I have to do as an employee. By the way, this form was created with DocuWare Forms. So as you can see, this is a good example of how you can combine two DocuWare modules. In our case, DocuWare Forms and, of course, DocuWare Workflow Manager. Okay, let's see if I log into my Gmail account, if I have already received an email. Yes, here it is. So this is a notification. Okay, my registration was successful, but please note that your supervisor has to approve your registration. So this is the first thing that every employee will see. I see my name, I see my ID, my staff number, so to say, and yeah, this confirmation email. Okay, let's take a look at all the things that happen in the workflow. Okay, a little bit slow, but here we are. As you can see, I created several workflows for the whole process, so to say. First workflow we have is to handle the registration. This is exactly what we did just now. So let's take a look at the steps. The trigger conditions are status equals new and project equals company field trip. Those two fields are filled by the form automatically in the background, so you don't have to do anything. Okay, the first thing we do is a data assignment. We get the information from the form. The first three index entries are the one that we have filled in the form: email, last name, and first name. We fill three global variables of type text. Well, not very difficult, but what we have here is a first arithmetic expression to fill a reminder date and a due date. This is something we need for the payment in the end. So let's see what happens here. We have an arithmetic expression, date add in our case. What this does is it adds 5 days to the store date of the document. So this is the index field we have here, and the system fields, store date, or date time as it is called here, but yeah. Of course, we could also use the current date here. Would be the same in the end in our case, but I use the store date. Okay, and the second date add arithmetic expression basically does the same, but it doesn't add 5 days, but 7 days to the store date. And this is what we call the due date. So this is to define that you have 7 days to pay for the field trip. And after 5 days, you are being reminded if you haven't paid yet, but we will see that later on. Okay, and now we have something that will be very interesting for many of our participants here, because now we have something concerning a different or a second file cabinet. So what we do here, we have several variables that we want to fill with some data from a second file cabinet that is called HR. In the HR file cabinet, we store all the information for the user, so first name, last name, email address, and what's most important in this case here is the supervisor, because we want to know who is the supervisor of the person that has just completed the registration for the field trip. Okay, what we do here, we have to select the file cabinet, HR in our case, and the column we want to extract, so to say. It is supervisor. And here we have the where clause. So we say, okay, select, as we can see here, this is a simple SQL statement, select supervisor from HR where the last name equals our variable name and the email address equals our variable called email. Of course, you could do that better in real life. You could use a primary key, something like that. But in our case, we suppose that the combination of name and email address is unique. And therefore, we will find exactly one entry in the file cabinet HR. Okay, the other variables that follow basically do the same. Supervisor text is, well, I have to explain this here. We have a variable called supervisor. This is of the type user. And the second one is, as the name suggests, it's a text variable. Why we need two variables for one field, for supervisor, I will explain later. And the same goes for those two fields here, user employee and username. User employee is, well, let me check here. Yeah, this is also something that is saved in the HR file cabinet. Username is something we want to use in the end to find out which DocuWare user is connected with this person that has registered for field trip. Okay. And here we have another arithmetic expression because we want to have the full name and the ID combined in one field. Before that, we have extracted the user ID from the HR file cabinet. So as I said, the ID is something as a staff number, if you want. And with this arithmetic expression using C-string, we want to combine the first name and the last name and the user ID to one combined field. What's interesting about this is that first name and last name are text fields and user ID is an integer field. So as you can see with the C-string expression, you can combine that. And as we have already seen in the email, this is the result. First name, last name, and my ID. Okay. Then we have a condition. We want to check if any of the variables we have, or we absolutely, that are absolutely essential for all we need to do, name, first name, or it should be last name, first name, and email, are empty. And if they are empty, then we will run into this mail activity where an error mail will be created. It's being sent to the administrator. And it basically says, okay, someone tried to register for the field trip, but the result from the HR file cabinet was, well, something must have been empty. So not everything was filled or found successfully from the HR cabinet. Okay, if all three fields actually have valid values, then we continue to another email, the email that we have already seen in my Gmail account. This is the confirmation of the registration. Here I use the variable user employee. And here we have the first explanation why I need to do this like that, because I cannot choose my user. Just let me get it right. What is it? Just to avoid any wrong information here. Let's do a quick check of the variables here. Here we have the overview. I have user employee, which is of type user, and I have user text, which is a text variable. Same goes for the supervisor. Supervisor is a user variable, and this is a text variable. So, okay, let's see here. Well, the email address is used from user employee, so I have to use the user employee here, so I cannot use a text variable here. I have to use a user variable. Okay, and here we have a little pause task. Well, this is not really necessary in real life, so to say, but I have included it to show you what happens in the web client up to this point. Okay, here we are. The webinar advanced 1 workflow has been triggered, and we are at the pause activity that we just have to confirm to continue. What I want to show you is the workflow history. You can see nothing has been happening so far, but well, actually something has been done, but nothing that was done manually, just automatic activities so far. Okay, we can check the workflow history, and as we can see, okay, my email address, my name and my first name were created here, or were filled, and the reminder date was set 5 days from today, and the due date 7 days in the future. The assigned data from the HR file cabinet was successful also. The webinar supervisor has been found as my supervisor for my user. And the full name and ID has been successfully created. Let's check name and address. Yeah, well, it's the else condition, so nothing is empty. And last but not least, we have the confirmation email. As you can see, it has been sent to my user, to my email address, and well, we have seen the result in the Gmail account already. Okay, let's confirm this task and go back to the designer. The next step is there to check the supervisor. Now we will check if a supervisor has been found, and here you can see why we need to use 2 variables for, well, let's say for one field. In that case, the supervisor, because here, if you want to see if something is empty, as you can see, I only can find text and integer variables here. I cannot choose the user variable supervisor here. So I have to store the information about the supervisor in a text variable too. Okay, and again, we have an error email if no supervisor was found. And if we have found a supervisor, then here we have the assignment step. And now it's the other way around. All I can choose from are user variables. So here I definitely need a variable of the type user. Okay. And okay, well, what the supervisor has to do now, he has to decide whether he wants to approve or reject the participation of the employee that has tried to register. Now we have to switch to the monitor task mode here, because now we have, oh no, that's not the one. This is the one I want to show, because now we have an activity that is assigned or has been assigned to the webinar supervisor. Therefore, I have to take the controller view here. Okay, now I can choose if I want to approve or if I want to reject this. If I want to reject, I have to enter a reason. So the field cannot be empty. As you can see, you cannot even confirm here. And here it says field cannot be empty, okay. And as soon as you enter something here, well, you could confirm, but of course we don't want to do this because we want to show some more things here, and therefore I have to confirm. Well, this is another workflow. We can ignore it. We will see it later. Okay, well, an email is created for the person that has been assigned to this task. And then, as we have already seen, we have approved and rejected as the two decisions the person can choose from. Here we have a change of the status field to approved. And of course, here we have it with a fixed entry of rejected. And we have the reason for rejection, which we define here in the form. And here we can say this is a mandatory field. So yeah, but we have exactly what we have already seen, that the user has to enter a reason for rejection because otherwise he cannot complete the task. Okay, what we have here too is this timeout here. So what I have done, I have created escalation management. I have set a reminder. Well, that reminds me after 2 working days that I will have an outstanding task. It creates an email that reminds me, or not me, but my supervisor, that the task will be overdue on, well, whatever date we have. The due date settings will come to effect after 3 working days. And then we have this rerouting here, which leads to our timeout activity, marked in blue. And if the timeout has been reached, we want to do a reassignment, in that case to a substitution rule that uses a substitution list that is called webinar substitution rule, or well, list actually. Here is something that I might add at this point. If you have substitution list that consists of, well, let's say 5 users, please be aware that in case you do it the way I did here, it will always reassign the task to the first user in the list, not to all of them at once. If you want to reassign a task to, well, several users, you need to use a role. So this is the big difference between a rule and a role. And again, we have the email activity that says, okay, task is due and please do something. And here we have another option that says, okay, if the user that the task has been assigned to is out of office and does not return until task is overdue, it will be reassigned. Okay, and then we have this loop here, but this is, of course, it's not an endless loop, because between here and there we have a reassignment to another user who has to approve or reject. So of course we want him to do this, so we don't want him to run into any error or stop the workflow or whatever. Therefore I have created this loop. Okay, by the way, we have an error handling here, a general error handling, by the way. It is kept very simple. We have a decision that says confirm, and we have a notification that says, okay, hey, well, please take a look at the task because something went wrong here. well, this is a little thing for all our participants who speak German. Here we have a word called Fehler, which is actually the German word for error. So yeah, I got that mixed up a little because I created several activities in a German workflow designer. So yeah, that's why it happened, but don't let yourself be confused by that. Okay. And of course we cannot, well, we cannot simulate the timeout right now because I have set it to several days. And that's the reason why I've created another very simple workflow that does the same as this one. And the one you might have already seen being triggered in the designer. Well, it has an assignment to one person, and he has to confirm something. And here again we have the escalation, but after 3 minutes, and overdue after 5 working minutes. Okay, well, let's see what happened here. Okay, here we have this workflow. This is something that I've created in the afternoon. So if we take a look at the workflow history again, here we can see, okay, the timeout has been reached. And yeah, let's go back to the workflow. So because I've said, okay, when the timeout has been reached, then go to the activity timeout reached that I have to confirm. And this is exactly what happened here. If we had an activity that was not overdue but will be due soon, so this reminder mail has been sent out, then we would have a yellow flag here that also points out that this task will be overdue in whatever time you have set. Well, you might ask yourself now, what is the difference between a working minute and a total minute? As we can say here, we can choose from working minute and from total minutes, or yeah, of course, hours, days, whatever. You can set this in the administration. Oh, wrong. That's what I wanted to do. I'll just log in here. By the way, everything we do today is done in our US cloud. Okay, and as we what we will see in a few seconds, here we have the general settings, and here you can set your calendar options, so you can say what time zone I'm in and what my working days are. So as you can see, Saturday and Sunday are not included in my working days. And here we have the most important part for the definition of a working hour or working minute. My working time has been defined from 8 to 17, so it's 5 p.m. And that's what defines a working minute and a working hour. And a total time, of course, when you start the workflow at let's say 4:58 in the evening and set the overdue activity to after 10 total minutes, it will be overdue after your working time. Well, so much for this escalation part. And I can confirm this timeout workflow because we don't need it anymore, because it has nothing to do with a field trip. Okay, well, if the supervisor has approved, which he has done, or I have done for him, I will get another email. Well, let's see if it already. Oh, yes. Well, approve or reject. This is the email that the supervisor will get. I have set all notifications to this mailbox here to show it to you. And here we have registration approved. So this is the email that I, as the employee, get. which says, okay, your supervisor has approved, and please note that you have to pay $10 for field trip. And here we have the due date, which is the 20th of December. Well, this has been successful too. This is what happens here. Yeah, we use the index entry due date. Okay, well, okay, registration declined basically ends the workflow because, yeah, well, that's it for this employee, but not for me, because my registration has been approved. And now we come to another very interesting thing we can do, or we can use in the Workflow Manager. It is a web service. I think this is one of the most powerful things you can use in the Workflow Manager at all. We need to do something else before that. We need to fill a variable, a text variable, actually, with some index entry. Because as I have shown you in the beginning, we want to create this list here. And as you can see, the names here are exactly the same, like my name combined with the ID. And this is what we want to do with a web service. So the web service has to add a line here with my name and set the status to approve or approved. But in order to do that, we need to give the web service a variable which we fill here. Okay, let's see. Okay, here we have the web service address. This is this is an address, or this is a web server on the internet that we use for our internal things we want to do. And one of my colleagues has created several methods, and in our case we want to create entry in list of participants. So I select this method here, and now we can see what the parameter is for the input. So what do we want to give to the web service? We want to give the full name and ID here, so the entry of the variable. And here we can set the result. So what do we want to do with the result that the web service gives us? What I want to do is I want to fill another variable which is called web service result. Okay. And after that, we check the web service result. If the web service says, okay, success, then we will end the workflow, and the entry for my name, well, should have been created. But if not, then we have another email, simple email that says, okay, the web service has failed, and the result was, well, whatever. Okay, and in the end we have another pause activity, which is just here to show the workflow history again. Okay, let's see what has been done here. Get name and get full name and ID. This has been successful. Web service, well, the result was success. Web service check, went into the then condition. And here we have another cool thing we can do, which I might show you first here in the pause activity. We can use a link. So for this continue decision, we have created a form that is not like the one we have already seen, a field, but it is a link. And the link is called, this is of course free text. I have said web service result list. And I have defined a fixed entry with a link to the participant list. Okay, let's check it out. Yeah, and as you can see, my name has been added to the list. It wasn't there in the beginning. status is confirmed, but of course paid is still set to no, because this is not what this workflow is supposed to do. So, well, this workflow has ended here. Okay, then I have a second workflow. You might notice that it has not been published. The reason is very simple. It's just a little reminder workflow that is triggered by a schedule. So not immediately after a document has been stored, but by a schedule. It starts every day at, well, again, this is 2100 hours if you want, or 9 p.m. every day. And what this is supposed to do, it checks for documents that have a status of approved, and the reminder date equals the current date. Okay, and this is a very simple and short workflow. All it does is it again uses a variable that is filled with a username, and then a reminder email is being sent that says your payment is still pending. Please pay then $10 until the due date. Okay, well, this is all the workflow does. And, oh, well, as you can see, a workflow can look very simple and be very short. And, of course, this is also a good example of the fact that you don't necessarily have to create huge and gigantic workflows every time you want to do something. You can also split up your workflow into several bigger or smaller workflows, as I have done here. Okay, then let's go to the third workflow that has to handle the payment. The trigger conditions are, well, in real life, I would use a schedule for this one as well, because I want to check all documents that have a status of approved and where the due date has been reached. Of course, I want to show it to you today, so I have changed the trigger conditions to status equals approved and status has changed. So you might have seen that the workflow has already triggered several minutes ago in the web client. And, well, okay. Let's check out what happens here. Well, the get user is something we already know, but yeah, it's a little bit different here, because here we have, again, the user employee variable, but we have another thing. It is a user list. I'll go back to the variables here. You can see it has a little, well, a little bit different icon than the standard user variable. You can do this. You create a user of group, and then you check this one here, this checkbox list variable. Then you can create a variable of the type user list, which we want to use here, because we have a parallel task in the end, which we want to assign both to the current employee that we have, and some user that is the cashier. And therefore, we have to use a user list, because the name or the username of the employee always changes depending on whom we're talking about. And so I fill the username into the user list, and I set a counter that is an integer variable with a fixed entry, and initialize it as, with a 0 here. Okay, and here we have another data assignment where we want to add the cashier user to the user list. And this is the most important part here. we have to uncheck the option replace, because we don't want to replace existing entries as stated here, but we want to add a second entry to the user list. Well, you might ask yourself, why have I done this in 2 steps? Why didn't I just do this here? Yeah, well, it's very simple, because if I say, well, global variable, yeah, the user list cannot be selected here, so you can only use it once, well, per assigned data assignment or step task. Okay, and well, this is the assignment step where we use the user list. We define the assignment with the variable and use the user list, which, well, should contain 2 DocuWare users now. Okay, well, let's see. Next thing is the parallel task, the one that I have already spoken about. Here we have 2 options. We have paid and not paid. Well, it's very simple. We have the data assignment again, which says the status has a fixed entry of paid, and the counter that I have defined in the beginning is increased by 1. This is another simple arithmetic expression here. We have the variable plus 1. Yeah, and that's it. And the special thing about the parallel task is that, well, it can only be completed if all people that have been assigned to the task have, well, done something here. And the idea behind that is that after the employee has done the payment, he can go into this activity and say, okay, well, yes, I have paid. Let's do this. Yeah, here we have it. Here's the parallel task, which is shown twice because I'm in the controller view here, or monitor view. Here we have the first assignment is for me as the employee, and the second one is for the user I have defined as the cashier, which is called webinar here. So I say, okay, yes, of course I have paid my $10 and confirm this here, but well, the activity is still here because the cashier has to decide whether, well, the payment has been received or not. And again, we have a mandatory comment field here. Well, if the payment hasn't been received, he has to fill some comment here. But of course, the cashier will say yes, he has paid. And here you can see the first workflow. I have to confirm the second pause here to end it. And well, 2 people have said yes, the payment has been received. So what happens to the counter? He is increased by 2, so to say, because we have every time we click on paid, we increase it, or say +1 here. So the next thing I do is I check the counter and say, well, if the counter is 2, then everything is okay. And if not, then, well, the participation has to be declined. This is, well, it's just a simple email. Again, it says, okay, your payment has been received. We hereby confirm your participation. And let's check my account here. Okay, this is the payment activity that is a reminder for the open task that we have already confirmed. And here we have it. Payment has been received. We hereby confirm your participation. So, well, everything has worked fine. And again, we use our web service because, as I have said before, we have this list, and here we have still this this entry paid no. Of course, we want to set it to yes. This is what the web service does. We have defined the variable just like before. Now we have the second method, and again we have the input field, which is full name and ID, and just like before, we have the web service result. And yeah, well, exactly the same one as in the first workflow. If the workflow says success, then we, well, have completed the workflow. This is the last pause we have here. Okay, web service has returned a success. Well, looks good. And again, we can, I will close it here. And here we have the result list. And yeah, it has, this entry has been set to paid yes. And the signature field is just, well, it's just if we actually do the field trip, then we can print out this this list, and everyone can do a little signature here. Well, a little short for a signature field, but nevertheless, that was the idea behind that. So this is not filled within the web service. Okay, well, that was the third workflow, and that was the end of, well, the things we wanted to do today for the field trip. Okay, then last but not least, I want to show you a fourth workflow, which will show you some basic error handling that you can do. But we're not talking about log files or something like that, but we want to show you some errors that can happen within the workflow designer. Okay, this is a workflow that, well, is based on the registration workflow, but I have included several deliberate errors here. The first one is in the arithmetic expression. What we have here is a simple spelling mistake, day spelled with 2A, and you should always check the validation here, because if you do, then you will see that there is this red box here, and if you hover the mouse over the box, he says, okay, error parsing expression, the field day with 2A, well, it doesn't exist. And as you can also see, you cannot click on OK, so you cannot even save it. Of course, you can well, uncheck the validation, then you can save it, but, well, it doesn't make sense in that case, because we need to correct this, and yeah, and then the validation is successful, and then we can save it again, but I will not do it right now. Okay, the second error is when we do the select statements from the file cabinet. This is a little bit tricky because, well, spelling mistake is obvious, but here we don't have the validation. So you can click on OK, whatever you do here, it doesn't matter. Well, it doesn't change. This is something we hear from customers from time to time. They say, well, I have created this external data activity and I want to use a file cabinet, but it doesn't work. And then the first thing we might say is, okay, here's the SQL statement, and copy it and, well, run it in your database and see what the result is. Well, if you cannot use the statement in the database, then, well, it doesn't work in the workflow manager either. Of course, this only works if you don't use the cloud, because there is no database that you can well, set a select statement. Okay, the third error I want to show you is this one here, marked with this is exclamation mark and the red color. And yeah, well, this is the one that prevents us from even publishing the workflow at all. We cannot publish it because we have something that, well, it cannot be. Also, the validations down here show us there is something that has gone wrong. If we click here, then we see there is an assigned to activity without assigned users. Okay, well, that's the problem here. You actually can save the activity without any user assignment, but of course it doesn't work. And as I have said, it will not, the workflow will not be published or cannot be published. If I do the assignment here, then the error will vanish, and the validations say, okay, no validation errors. But of course, this is not, well, it doesn't point out the errors here. So in general, we could say that it is always very important to do those error exits, or to do error handling like I have done here, either in one general step, or if you want in some special steps like here, when you say, okay, we want to do a special or create a special email or whatever. Okay, and the fourth error is something that we could do here, but we have seen that already. When we say we have a mandatory field here, or let's say he can use something from the select list only, and the user, well, doesn't fulfill that criteria, then it will not work at all, and the workflow will create the error message and the red box again in the web client. Okay, then maybe some words about the task list up here. Well, it's no error in a classic sense, but if someone says, okay, well, I don't see who the workflow is assigned to, then maybe this one is missing here. Of course, you can reset the default, which is done here, or you can remove those here, and you can edit and remove it just the way you want. Okay, yeah. Well, okay, then that's it from my side. Thank you for your attention, and Bernd, now I think we're waiting for questions.
Okay, indeed, we have quite a lot of questions incoming right now. So let's try to maybe answer one or the other of this new questions, maybe live and right now. But anyway, there were also two questions that I first of all want to ask and to present to the public, which were asked more at the beginning of the webinar. One thing was that one participant thought that it would be a good idea to have a filter option in the result list of the workflows and the task lists, something similar like in Excel, that you can filter a little bit in the task lists. So yeah, if there are a lot of tasks available, a lot of documents in the list, to be better able to handle those. Any information about this? I think I would say it's a feature wish, basically, so it's not yet implemented. Indeed, there is no such filter.
Yes.
But from the information we have from our product department, we can tell that they are working on it. It's been planned. They are aware of this wish, basically, so we are trying to implement this soon. Maybe I can also switch to the Q&A slide then. If we want to show something in the VM, then we can switch back, of course. And then there was a second question, second thing asked, which was whether it's possible to automatically confirm tasks after given time. And maybe I can also say something about what we provided as an answer during the webinar, because it's maybe as you've seen, maybe if you played around a little bit with the workflow designer and so on, there is also no such feature available because, well, basically the idea is, or the intention of the workflow manager of this to work is that that a human person basically confirms the tasks. That's the main idea. Therefore, we do not have such an option integrated. But what we have is, there are different kind of workarounds for this that we can think of. One is to use the escalation settings, basically, to then reassign a task, and then it appears that then there is another task after that, and this you can do by scheduling it basically, and you can then configure it in a way that it's escalated after a given time. There is also another option that we could think of during the webinar, which is that you basically end the workflow at this state and create a second one that is then triggered by a schedule. So a scheduled workflow, which we a little bit covered last week in the basic webinar. And this, for example, could check for certain index fields to be filled, because this was the example given in the question, a little bit more into detail, and then continues with the process. So this was one additional idea. Then I'll quickly check whether there is another maybe interesting question in the list. Just give us a few seconds. Also, Merry Christmas from our side. And what else do we have got? There was a question regarding testing variables, whether variables are empty or not. And maybe we can say a few words about this. There was basically the question that whether the information is right, that certain types of variables need to be checked by nothing, or do they need to be checked by an empty string or something like this. There are different approaches, and maybe, I don't know, you can say maybe a few words about this.
Okay. Well, that's a very complex topic, so to say. We had quite a few support cases regarding that question, and we did a lot of testing, and therefore we are preparing FAQ article for that, where we want to cover all of that knowledge that we have so far, and to provide a solution that will cover everything. Because yes, it's correct that it has changed. The behavior has changed in the latest DocuWare versions. Therefore, we really need this FAQ article as soon as possible, because this is something that really needs to be addressed. And the C string function or arithmetic expression that I used during the webinar, or my registration workflow and so on, this is something that can help here. So because we convert everything to a string, and then we say, okay, is there something in it, but yeah, like I said, it's very difficult. So please wait for the FAQ article for a definitive answer.
Okay, thanks for that information. Then there was another question: can you approve several documents in a workflow in one time, or several tasks, as we kind of call this? It represents, of course, a document in the background. So anyway, is it possible to approve multiple, or to take multiple decisions one decision for multiple tasks at one time? Let's say it that way. Okay, basically, this is right now it's not possible. Maybe we could think of this feature. We also asked in one or the other situation during the webinar, one or the other participant who asked questions to provide a feature wish in our user voice forum, so docuware.uservoice.com. We can recommend for such requests, but what we can suggest is every task or every decision within a task has the option to set it as the default decision. One decision within one task can be defined as this default decision, and if this is activated, then basically, if you have it's only one click per task at least, so you can speed up things a little bit. So you can basically click on a confirm one task, then immediately the next one will be opened, the next one in the list, and the default answer or the default decision is already selected, pre-selected kind of, so you only need to click on confirm again. So this would be at least one thing to make your life or life of the employees easier, considering confirming tasks. Okay, as time's up, we will stay here for a few minutes. So first of all, thank you for listening to us and then for joining us. We want to just finally ask you about your feedback about today's webinar, also considering new ideas for the upcoming sessions, as I mentioned before. So we need your feedback basically. When you could close this webinar, then you will see a little survey, how you like today's webinar and about ideas for the next sessions, as I said. So it would be great if you can answer this short survey, if you can rate our webinar, and yeah, thanks in advance for your feedback and ideas. As a last note, in the next few days, we'll publish a record of this webinar and a list with all your questions and our answers in our forum on our website. So you will find also answers to those questions that we could not answer within the webinar today. And so I would like to thank all of you for participating in today's webinar. And for joining us. So it was great to have you here. See you basically next time. Thank you, of course, also Michael and Greg for last week's presentation, for last week's workflow information. And see you soon in one of the next webinars. Goodbye.